All right, good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second rendition of the SOF Team Room event. My name is Matt Parrish, and I'm a Sergeant Major and an active duty Green Beret in the U.S. Army, and I'm also the host of SOCOM's SOFcast podcast. You know, I've spent my entire career within SOF, so the Special Operations community is my community, which is why I'm honored to be here today as the Master of Ceremonies for this team room. If you aren't familiar with these SOF Team Room events, they were born of the need for open and honest conversation on the impact of 20 years of global war on terror and in response to the recent Afghan withdrawal. These virtual team rooms are a place for candid conversation on topics facing our community. So when you leave this team room, you leave knowing your community walks this path with you and with some helpful information in hand so that you can continue to strengthen the SOF community by continuing to have these candid conversations. So we'll be here together for the next 2 hours or so, talking about issues ranging from communication and relationships to the impact of psychedelics on PTSD. Topics that my peers and I, our families, and others in the community have been discussing often recently. So luckily for us, the Global SOF Foundation is running this thing, so the format for today is pretty straightforward, as long as you stay on this webpage and follow along with the agenda below. So first off, we have the incredible opportunity to have an opening panel featuring the SEAC Ramón CZ Colón-López. SEAC Colón-López is the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the most senior enlisted service member by position in the United States Armed Forces. And he's also the principal military advisor to the chairman on all matters involving joint and combined total force integration, utilization, health of the force, and joint development for enlisted personnel. He's also from our community as a PJ, and he's also a hell of a podcast guest on SOFcast Season 2, Episode 6. We're honored to have him here today to share his experiences and unique perspectives, as he'll be joined by Dr. Chris Frueh, who many of you have read his work, who will guide this conversation today. After that opening session, we'll switch gears a little bit into session A of our more informal breakout sprints, focused on 3 different topics. You'll get to those sessions by scrolling down through the agenda and clicking on the button that corresponds with the session that you want to join. Sprint 1 is our SOF connection breakout, which will focus on communication and compartmentalization and be led by SOF power couple, Jen and Tom Satterley from the All Secure Foundation. Sprint 2 is our health and performance breakout, which will focus on a current hot topic, the SGB or stellate ganglion block and psychedelics. That session will be led by Dr. Jeffrey Teedy and Dr. Lynette Everill. Sprint 3 is our SOF mission and transition breakout, and this one will focus on balance and excellence in service with Ken Falk. He is chairman and founder of Boulder Crest, an organization focused on the teachings of post-traumatic growth, and the EOD Warrior Foundation. If more than one of those sessions sounds like something you'd like to tune into, don't worry. Session B is going to be a repeat of session A. So you can check out one of those topics for the first 20 minutes, and then you can click on and listen to another one of those topics for the second 20 minutes. Then at around 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, after both rounds of those breakout sessions have ended, we're going to ask all attendees to come back to this original page and watch the closing discussions. I promise you won't want to miss it because it's bringing together all of those key speakers from the day into a collaborative recap conversation led by Dr. Frueh. When in doubt, just stick to the event website and the agenda, and they will help you stay on track. Before we get into our first speaker, I do want to take an opportunity to thank our SOF advocate sponsors at Legacy for supporting today's event. Legacy is the leading digital fertility clinic for men, and it can all be done from the privacy of your own home. Learn more about them at givelegacy.com. Thank you all for supporting. And one more note, there's a banner on the website for a SOF health survey for active duty and veteran SOF. We are trying to get as many responses as possible. If you're active duty, it takes only 6 or 8 minutes. I can tell you, I did it this morning. I didn't want to pitch this without having done it myself. It's quick and easy. If you've transitioned already from service, there's a few extra questions, but it'll still only take you about 7 to 10 minutes. That's it. And the reason your participation is critical is because it'll help the Global SOF Foundation know what issues are impacting our community health. And then we will get support for those issues, from cancer screenings to mental health care. So please find the link and take that survey, share it with your commands, and help us get as many responses as possible. Well, folks, that's enough for me. Now I'd like to introduce our opening panel, the SEAC, CZ Colón-López, and Dr. Chris Frueh. Take it away.
All right, so goodness gracious, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for that nice introduction. SEAC, I'm going to ask you to address me as Chris, if you're okay with that. And is it all right if I address you as CZ?
That is perfectly fine, Chris.
All right. So let's talk about the first topic. I think, we met in November for a similar forum through Global SOF and the Military Family Special Operation Collaborative, Family Collaborative. And we talked about Afghanistan a lot, and there was a lot of emotion and angst and grief at that time that was high, and I think it still is very high. So maybe just, we don't need to necessarily spend a lot of time on this, but what are your thoughts on the withdrawal and the heroic actions of our community in particular?
Well, Chris, I'll give you a 5-minute rundown on it, and I'll be as candid as possible. Clearly, I was there since the beginning. So I spent the full 20 years in some capacity involved in this armed conflict. And it didn't take long after probably deployment or rotation number 3 or 4 to where you start asking the question, man, how does this end? Because we were going after person, and this person will give us intelligence, and then we'll go after another group of people. So it was like a perpetual list of people that we were going after. So what was the desired end state? And clearly from the beginning, we knew what that end state was, and that was to prevent Al-Qaeda from attacking the homeland ever again. But what we got to see over 4 administrations was a continuous buildup of actions in Afghanistan, not to mention the simultaneous conflict in Iraq spawning in early 2003. So we started wondering, how does this end? If we're gonna be building now, Bagram used to be moon dust, and then it became a city. If you recall the comments that General McChrystal made, it's like, hey, when we have Burger King and a green bean coffee, I think our focus is not on the right thing when we're here to conduct combat operations to defeat a counterinsurgency, counterterrorism mission. So we started looking at all of the efforts that we have been putting in place, i.e. building the military, in parallel, Department of State helping the government of Afghanistan stand up, voting, women's rights, schools. So it became a nation building initiative that the military was operating in the shadows on the background, still getting after the original mission, which was to decimate Al-Qaeda. I recall back in the mid 2010s, talking to a group of air advisors and going around Kabul International Airport and some of the training initiatives they had. And I was just like, are you guys confident that if we were to leave, because that's when the commentary began about the drawdown, we need to leave Afghanistan. And I asked a simple question, if we leave, are you confident that the Afghans are going to be able to sustain these platforms? And they were not. The consensus was that unless you have some kind of contractor presence to be able to go ahead and run due diligence, that the Afghans were not going to be able to sustain that Air Force. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes that we made was bring too much technology and try to make them too much like us, when it is a tribal mindset, not a mindset like ours. And having the expectation that they will operate at the same level that we would. Now, clearly, very capable warriors, but they had a lot of government issues. And one thing that I have seen in 30 years of military service is that when you have improper governance, typically the militaries crumble. And I got to see that all over Africa and many of other places. And man, so here we come to the decision by the current administration, by President Biden, to go ahead and shut down Afghanistan. We had some tough calls to make. Our position was always the same: 2,500 advisors to be able to help the Afghan national military to be able to sustain. And we were told to go to 0, and now it was time to execute. Speaking candidly here, because a lot of people have asked, hey, how come you weren't jumping up and down on the chairman's desk, telling him not to do that and everything else? Like, well, we had some very, very good adult conversation. We were all in agreement that 2,500 was what we wanted to do. But at the end of the day, it is not the military's call. It is the administration's call. And once we get those orders, if they're lawful orders, we have to execute. Now, the second question that I was asked is like, well, how come you didn't resign when you didn't like the orders that were given? I said, because that is not what I do. If I were to do that and resign, I will simply be opening the door for probably some yes man to come in and just follow blindly. But loyalty is not mindless obedience. You know, my loyalty is to the people that are still going to be on the ground performing missions and the ones that are going to come after and be able to go ahead and execute the wartime missions of the future. So I needed to make sure that I maintained the confidence of the troops, that they still had advocacy at the highest of levels, just like the chairman did. Well, we all saw what happened after that. It was a character smearing campaign, blame, pointing fingers, you know, a million armchair quarterbacks with the best decision on how it should have been done. Well, we tried to do our best with the orders that we were given. Did it come out the way that we wanted? I wouldn't like to think so, because I would have liked to call it when we shot Bin Laden in the face, that would have been the end state, come home and call it quits. But unfortunately, that's not what we did. We ended up staying there for a specific amount of time, trying to build a military, and it just didn't work out, you know. But I will tell you that after the last plane left, we were watching via VTC, the last plane take off, and the secretary left the room, the chairman left the room, and I left the room. And then I went back to my office in the E-ring, and I told my team, I'm going to shut the door, don't bother me for a couple of hours. And I just let out my kit on the table. I still have my kit in my office, and I started reflecting and going over and over again in my head, was this worth it? Was this worth it? I started thinking about my fallen comrades, you know, on the SEAL side, on the Army side, on the special tactics side. And even with some of our allies and partners, was it worth it? Was it worth it? And at the end of it, when it was all said and done and I got it out of my system, I have to say, you're goddamn right, it was. You know, every single mission that we did it to the best of our abilities. We ended up laying it all on the line just because we believe in what we were doing, and that is protecting the American citizens from further attacks. And every single person that served in those 20 years did that job magnificently well. And I will tell you, do not let anyone take that away from you, regardless of the narrative that is out there. And I said that publicly on a video, and I just, you know, I had to get that off my chest because a lot of people were struggling with the decision, especially with the outcome of the events at Kabul International Airport. But, you know, in a quick few minutes, that's what I wanted to say about the drawdown of Afghanistan. It created a lot of emotions. It ended up picking up on a lot of different scabs, and it's okay to go ahead and talk about it. But at the end of the day, just think about the actions that you did in the time that you had behind the trigger, you know, with your responsibility for the defense of the nation, and think about all the good you have done for generations to come. I think you're muted, Doc.
Thank you. That is the most eloquent response I could have imagined hearing. I'm like goosebumps, and I'm actually choking back tears right now after listening to you. Well, and that kind of segues us into, I think, the next question, which is, it's no secret that the SOF community, that the SOF path is a hard path, and that some of the facts on the ground right now may not be all that great. From where you sit right now, how can we better walk that hard path and make meaning of it, and live the life, live a flourishing life?
Well, you know, I recently put a post that said that, you know, a life without humor is like a book without words. And I bring that up because I think humor is a cornerstone of the hard life of a SOF operator and their families. because we're trying to find humor in the weirdest of places. And you're gonna hear from Tom and Jen Saturday here pretty soon. A perfect example on how we power through some of this stuff. And also, Chris Ferris, the former command sergeant major of our former unit. But when I look at the SOF culture, it is a hard life. I mean, you give quite a bit. You put yourself through the ringer just to prove yourself that you're worthy of that mission. And once you get anointed as a special operator, and you get in the company of those people that ended up going through the same crucible as you did, it is an immense sense of pride. And there's not much that people can throw at you that you're not willing to take on. The problem is that we do it so often and so frequently that we become numb to a lot of different things. And, adversity becomes routine, pain becomes non-existent, conflict becomes an expectation, and it is almost like a drug. You crave it day in and day out, and the more you do it. And I believe Ernest Hemingway said it best, there's no hunting like the hunting of man. And for those who have hunted our man and liked it, nothing else compares thereafter. And that was the reality for a lot of us in that community that ended up going from late 2001 on to Afghanistan and Iraq. But what we're seeing right now is just a compilation of stress on people that are internally hard, that will not want to show weakness by calling out for help, that finally are coming to terms that they cannot contain all of that anger, all of that adrenaline, everything that is inside of us. And man, the wheels are slowly coming off. And it took me personally about 15 years to come clean about the issues that I was having. And once I did, it was a relief, but it was just that same feeling that probably everyone has right now, that I don't want to be the one that looks weak coming out of this. Mm-hmm. But man, there's so many coming forward now saying, you know what, I wish I would have done this sooner. But some of the issues that we have seen in the SOF community is the byproduct of that life that we have been living for the past 20 years. And it is not your fault. It is not your fault. You have done a lot. But now is our opportunity to go ahead and reset, get fixed, and continue to be productive members of society.
I often talk to guys and talk about it in terms of comparing it to gravity, physics. You could be the toughest in the world, toughest ever, but eventually what goes up is going to come down. And we talk a lot about mental illness and addiction and suicide. But I usually like to start the conversation with folks that it starts with physiological injuries at the molecular and cellular level. And those just can't be denied. It's not a matter of willpower. You can't willpower your way to have a broken bone heal itself. You can't willpower your way to cure or fix some of these injuries that are inevitably sustained over time. And so I try to, like you said, I try to help folks understand that this is a natural, unintentional, but ultimate outcome, eventual outcome of this type of career and this type of path. So if we kind of set pathologies aside, I've been calling it operator syndrome, and others have too. We can call it, the consequences of high allostatic load on every bodily system, as well as social system and family system. But what if we started talking about wellness, mental wellness, physical wellness? What does that look like for you?
So it just so happens, when I was talking to the group yesterday, I just had my 5th stellar ganglion block just 2 days ago. And it is something that has helped me just go ahead and power through the days. And, my spouse is the greatest sensor when it's time to get a shot. Mm-hmm. Just so happens that this one just landed on Valentine's Day, which is probably better than a box of chocolates for her. But, when we look at the whole system, the holistic approach to maintaining the human weapon systems, because we in the military, we have been great at keeping aircraft that are 80 years old flying. But humans, we haven't done all that well.
Yeah.
And finally, in 20 years of operating under these conditions, we're getting somewhere now to where we realize that the performance of the human is probably the most critical thing. And special operations have always said it. Humans are more important than hardware. So now we're getting to a point to where we need to have a system, not just in special operations, but in the mainstream military, that cares for the preventative side of things when it comes to the human weapon system, because the system right now as designed is reactive, and most of the issues are fixed with Motrin. And then when the wheel comes off, they decide to go ahead and do more evasive procedures.
Right.
But we're trying to get to a place to where we look at the holistic approach, from the mind, the spirit, the physical performance, the stressors that come into life, not just for the member, but for the families. That is how you break the stigma. When people feel okay to go ahead and take that full body approach from head to toe, from wallet to relationships, to be able to go ahead and say, hey, something is not right. I need to make sure that I take care of this. And by alleviating this stressor, a lot of these other things are going to get better. And we have to bring the families on board too, because the one thing that we know right now is that for every single operator that has been able to dig out of that hole, they didn't do it by themselves. That spouse put the ladder in there to be able to get you out of there a lot faster than what you would have done trying to climb it out yourself.
I often describe the approach as essentially a whole person, all systems approach. So at the level of the individual, yeah, we got to be concerned about the cardiac system, the pulmonary system, certainly the central nervous system, the gastrointestinal system, all of that, et cetera, everything, skeletal system, muscular system. But also then it's the community systems. The family is a system, the community is a system, the command structure. After service is over, there's other systems within the civilian life. So I'm with you, CZ. I think we need a more comprehensive approach to wellness that takes everything into account. Too often, I think folks are referred to a therapist, and that's there, go see the therapist, and that's it. Your problems will all get solved over there, and that's insufficient. How is your family? How has your family helped you connect dots, gain awareness, find meaning, and what role have they played? And in turn, what role have you played iteratively back to your family as your career has progressed and as your wellness has evolved and changed?
Well, Chris, you talk about the operator syndrome, right? So I'll give you a little bit of my story.
Please.
So I left the special operations community in 2005 after 4 deployments, and I ended up going to an academic environment. So I became the commandant of the PJ school, and I was in that environment for about 4 years. But that's when the wheels started coming off, when I was segregated from the pack, from the tribe, and I was now with a different crew that had very little in common with what I had been through. It just so happens that in the time that I was gone from the unit, I lost some very, very good friends. And I had that survivor skill. Here I am sitting in an academic environment. They're still getting after it. I need to get back over there, which eventually I did. But it was at that time that Janet started noticing the changes. And the changes were not good. A lot of the things that were—
What kind of changes?
So behavior. So I was drinking too much at times. I was really short, getting angry on different things. My sleep patterns were definitely messed up. Sometimes I will sleep with an eye open, which is kind of freaky. Other times I'll be sleeping, just sitting up. At times I will get up in the middle of the night and just be standing in the kitchen, just staring at nothing, and then coming back. There were times to where I was outside of the home, and the same thing will happen, that I would just get up in the middle of the night and I would just stand watch. So there were a lot of things that were happening, and she was always telling me to get help.
So if I may interrupt you with a question. So those were behaviors your wife could see. Are you aware of what you were experiencing internally?
So for me, Doc, Chris, I thought it was normal. It's kind of like the price you pay for being in combat. And so I didn't really, I was just like, well, that's just the way things are. I'll get over it. That's what I was telling myself. I can work through this. But it would just getting progressively worse over the years. And it wasn't until I came back to the unit in 2009 to where finally I just broke down. And I had a long drive from Fort Bragg to Whispering Pines. And in that drive, I just thought about it. And I asked her, it's like, hey, look, Janet, we need to sit down and we need to talk. This is what I'm going through. And I just came clean about everything. And she told me, you need to get help. So I started talking to the unit psych on the down low because I didn't trust the system at the time. I didn't want to go to the clinic and be seen by a therapist because I thought that that would be the end of my career, just like a lot of people that struggle with getting help. But, I ended up just going along and she tried to help me, as much as she could. But at some point, that need for adrenaline put me in the hospital once again. And I got into a really bad bike crash and she gave me an ultimatum. She just said, hey, dude, either you get help finally or that this is it, we're done. So I went to the brain clinic at Landstuhl, then I ended up going through NICO and, with my peers at NICO and other places, man, we're all going through the same thing. It was almost, it was freaky that, every single operator is kind of going through something very, very similar. And then when you speak to the spouses, they're going through the same thing too. So very common. So, it was something that finally, when we came out of there, I just decided to just go ahead and make it a priority to make sure that we do everything in our power in the time that I have as a SEAC to be able to have a system that is welcoming of people, because I think that we can do it in the special operations community, but I don't think that the mainstream force is still comfortable to be able to seek the help that they need. So we're trying to get this program to make sure we get everyone the same level of care for them to be able to be better.
You've mentioned therapy and you've mentioned stellate ganglion block treatment, which I am a fan of. I just curious, what other kinds of maybe formal treatments helped you, but also what kind of maybe lifestyle changes or adjustments to your routine have been useful and important?
Well, obviously drinking less was a big help, and finally just coming to terms that I wasn't right. Being aware of the fact that I have about 8 TBIs that I didn't know about, and those things actually change the way that you react sometimes to different things. I think that one of the most telling things that I got from finally seeking treatment was self-awareness. When NICO started connecting the dots, with the sleep study, there's like, all right, you're not sleeping well. Let's find out why you're not sleeping. Then going to the cellular and the chemical level by the complete blood work that gets in there, gauging your stressors and everything else. Then going through the MRIs, going through the interviews, bringing the families in. About 85% of the stuff that was done to me at NICO was non-invasive. It was self-awareness. But number one, we didn't want to talk about it because we didn't want to have the conversation. And number two, we didn't want to believe it because we tend to look at ourselves as bad and invincible. Well, we're not. We're just as vulnerable as the average person. It's just that our threshold for misery is so much higher that we tend to suck it up, embrace the suck, like we say, quite a bit. And our families are just the same. So so just that self-awareness of knowing that, hey, you tend to go ahead and fly off the handle with different triggers. You tend to go ahead and tune out your spouse at different times. You tend to go ahead and do this when you drink. All of that stuff helps me mitigate, what is inside of me right now that I know is never going to go away. As a matter of fact, I realize that it's going to progressively get worse as I age. But I'm prepared to deal with whatever is coming, and so is she, because we're aware of the issues that I'm having.
So hard conversations with yourself and with your wife, and maybe probably certainly others, was critical to help you even initiate changes. If I correctly hear what you're saying. Those honest conversations are so hard to even start, to even get to the point where you're willing and able to initiate them. What would it have been like if your family had not been there? Or maybe flip it around, what would you advise to somebody who doesn't have a strong family support system? How does an operator who is single or divorced or alone, how do they make it?
Well, the good thing about our communities is that we have a very, very strong supporting mechanism. And you know that that the teammates, the guys in the team room will do anything for you.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. And something that is critical is that, being in the same tribe just creates that moral authority to heal, because we like to help each other out. For somebody that doesn't have a family, that doesn't have anybody near and everything else, we all have a best friend. We all have somebody that we depend on day in and day out. We did so in combat. We do so when we go out to the bars. We do so when we do a lot of different things. Man, just sit down and have that conversation, because it's uplifting. It's healing. Just takes a huge load off your shoulders. And that's the advice that I would just start with the person that you trust the most, and then walk the rounds into target from there, into getting the help that you need. And I offer this to anybody that is out there that is skeptic about getting the help that they need. If for some reason you think that the system is going to screw you over, man, email me direct. I'm the only Colón-López on the global. If you're a civilian, you can reach me via LinkedIn, and I will be there to help you. I have done this several times right now with different people, and nobody deserves to feel like they're alone. You have a lot of brothers and sisters out there that are going through the same thing that you're going through.
Call them, reach out.
Absolutely.
I think we're kind of running up on our time here, and I want to be respectful and give you maybe the last chance, like open question. Is there anything you'd like to just say to the community, or any thoughts that you have that you'd just like to kind of put out there for all of us to hear?
Well, the one thing that I would like to say, especially for some of the younger operators and their families that are listening, I know that there's a certain sense of demoralization after the shutdown of Afghanistan, because we're not heavily involved in combat operations. I will tell you, be careful what you wish for, because the next fight is just around the corner. And the one thing that I believe wholeheartedly is that the special operations community is going to be utilized more than ever in future conflict when it comes to strategic power competition. So again, now is the time to go ahead and reset and train until we cannot get it wrong, and make sure that you're ready for when the flag goes up, you're ready, and that you give it your best shot, not only to go ahead and best the enemy, but to come back home to your families. All right. Now is the time to go ahead and reset, take care of your mind, take care of your body, to make sure that we can take care of the nation.
That's outstanding. I think we're about out of time, but let me just check in with our moderators who are here to keep me on track. Do we have a few minutes left?
All right, I'm getting the go ahead. So I want to just tell you guys, thank you. CZ, always appreciate every time I hear you speak. I appreciate your candor and really leading from the front on being open about these issues. I faced them, and a ton of other folks that are listening to this, and obviously that are out in the force have. So Chris, CZ, can't thank you enough for your time. And I really look forward to that conversation at the end of the event after these wellness sprints. But speaking of those sprints, we'll now have a little short break as we transition to session one, give you the opportunity to be able to click on those breakout sprints. And so all you have to do, again, Global SOF Foundation crushes these virtual events. They make it easy for you. All you got to do is scroll down to the bottom of this webpage, and you'll see an agenda there. And you should see breakout session A with 3 different sprints listed that I mentioned earlier. Each sprint will happen in Zoom, and it'll focus on issues critical to SOF. They'll only last about 20 minutes, and each is led by members of a key special ops organization or program, as I introduced them earlier. After session A, the wellness sprints will repeat. So check out the agenda and see which one you think will be most meaningful for you to attend for the second round. If you're really interested in that one thing, you can stay in that same one. Just understand that it will be a repeat to allow folks, but the questions and answers at the end may be different. At 20:30 or at 8:30 p.m. for you normal folks, we'll all come back here to this page to participate in what should be a pretty interesting recap session with all the breakout and panel speakers. So make sure you bookmark this team room page so that you can get back here at the end of them and enjoy your 2 breakout sessions. And I'll see you back here in an hour.